Thank you, organizers, for giving this opportunity to highlight some of the issues related to the dietary changes which are happening in India and where the fruits or the vegetables they fit into that kind of things. Uh, in the morning session, of course, I could not attend it, but in this previous session, I was there and found that most of the emphasis, particularly when we're talking about the fruits, it's on the supply side kind of interventions. But I feel that demand side interventions, they are more important. Demand side factors are more important than the supply side factors. If there is a demand, the supply can match the demand. Now, there are several factors that influence the demand or the consumptions, including the income levels of households, the location, whether it's urban or rural areas, consumers' taste and price preferences, and moreover, the prices. Because many of the poor households, as we say, that they don't consume because they are very costly. So, understanding plate, understanding the plate. I deliberately chose this topic, put this prefix from plate to plough. It's really very essential for the supply side kind of interventions. So, what the plate signals, what to produce, how much to produce, how to produce, means the kind of, whether it's good agriculture practices, minimize pesticide residues, and all those kind of things. And then for whom to produce. It is for domestic market or for the export market, or how to minimize, import substitution. There was Dr. H.P. Singh was talking about exotic fruits, how to go for some kind of import substitutions. And these implications, they have these things, these decisions of the farmers have several implications for policies. Or even for the farmers, how much land area to allocate, for input supplies, what kind of input demand is there in the markets, for market prices, price volatility. This is a big issue, particularly in case of the perishables. In here in Delhi, that we call Azadpur market, the Asia's largest markets. The trucks of fruits and vegetables, they come early in the morning. If they are sold earlier, they get the better prices. And when the supply increases, the prices drop like anything. So what kind of these things can happen? Then what kind of institutional supports? In previous session, of course, FPOs, cooperatives, they were asked about it. And then, of course, then based on this, designing of the policies or the programs or the projects and implication for the natural resources or even for climate risk management. Dr. Naresh Kumar in the previous session, he highlighted some of these things, indicating that it may encourage, but when talk about the climate change and the fruits, there are three issues, particularly they may be emitting the greenhouse gas emissions, but they also mitigate the greenhouse gas emissions in terms of carbon sequestration, and more importantly, they mitigate the risks. So overall, all these factors, they have a significant influence on consumers, producers' decision as well as the consumption. In India, a transition is happening in the diet, away from staple cereals or the food grains towards high value commodities, including fruits and vegetables. And if you see over the past 2 decades, the share of fruits, it has increased to about fresh and dry fruits about 10% and of vegetable about 19%. That means from in 1990, 2000, it was about 15% in the household food budget share. Now it is about 20% or something like that. But likewise, this is in urban areas, and this transition towards this kind of dietary transition, it is more evident or more faster in the rural areas. Both the consumption of both the fruits and vegetables, it has increased at a faster rate in the rural areas. Now, on basis on some survey, Gina, he highlighted some of the household consuming fruits. So this is from a very large scale survey conducted by our National Sample Survey Organization, about 150,000 households. So on an average, today, you say about 90% of the household, they consume fruits. In rural areas and of course in urban areas, it's about 94% or something there. And over the past decades, it has increased considerably, both in the rural areas and so. Moreover, the most important things, Dr. H.P. Singh, he was saying the millets now are the food of the rich. So here also what we find that it is fruits are not there only in the plate of the rich, but it's also in the poor. If you see at the bottom 20% of the expenditure class, there is a significant increase in the fruit consuming households from 44 to 88% in rural areas and 60 to 88% in urban areas. So if these kind of changes which are taking place, they have a lot of implications for that. On terms of per capita consumption, of course, of the fresh fruits only, I'm not talking about the processed juices and all those kind of things. That has also increased, both in rural and urban areas. And the increase is again, they are more at the bottom of the income groups. Things, they lead to this kind of dietary changes in the population. Now, here this is an important point, particularly when we talk about this project. Now, India aspires to be a developed country by 2047 when it attains 100 years of independence. And but that time, what will be our total demand for different types of, food commodities? This includes both that household consumption and outside household consumption. Now, what we find is that one thing that is now we have to move out of staples. Our total demand for staple, whether it's rice or wheat, it is unlikely to change much. And what are the changes will occur? They will occur due to only the population growth, not because of the income. But income increases, that will. Now, if you look at the consumption, the demand for vegetables and fruits, now there is a huge, even in the business as usual scenario, business as usual in the past decade, our economy grew at a rate of about 6.5% or something like that. Now, this demand over the next 5 years, demand for vegetables, it will be around 1.8 times what we have today. And for fruits, it will be 2.2 times. Now, if the economy grows at a rate of 8%, this increase will be much faster than. So one thing what is very important, particularly the projects like that, so you have to convince the farmer to go for the crop diversification in favor of this kind of high value agriculture. I will come later why it is not happening. Now, another factor, of course, it is that exports and imports. Now, if you see that our exports, whether it's the fresh fruits or the processed fruits and juices, they have been increasing. Exports of both, they have been increasing almost at a same rate. And notably, banana is the most exported commodity today. It has experienced significant growth in exports in the recent 3-4 years. And it is followed by grapes and cashews. So together, these three commodities, they account for about 50% of the total exports. Likewise, in imports also, if you see, it is basically we import the fresh fruits, not the juices and all those kind of things. And in imports, here again, what we find is that about 2/3 of the total imports, they comprise of the cashew, almond, and fresh apple. So what kind of import strategies, import substitution strategies we can have to reduce the dependence on imports? There are several implications, I said, for this kind of the changes what are happening in the plate. There are several implications for agricultural growth. Climate resilience we have seen. There will be implications for the labor market because these commodities production, they are labor intensive crops. So then accordingly, and then of course the poverty and nutrition, what will be the markets, implication for markets, market reforms, prices, supply chains, processing and value addition, of course, and then the financing, of course, particularly in case of fruits which are require high initial capitals for that. And of course, based on this kind of signals that we are getting, what will the implications for research? What consumers want, what kind of fruits they want. Now, if you see here that horticulture sector as a whole, fruits and vegetable, they contribute nearly about 20% to the value of output of the agricultural sector. Now, this sector it has been growing very fast as compared to all other types of, leave aside the animal source foods. But this sector, which is fruits and vegetables and the spices, they have been growing at a much faster rate compared to, cereals, pulses, and commodities. And how much they are contributing to the agricultural growth. Now, if you see the growth, if you see that this contribution to agricultural growth, it's about 30% now in the past decade as compared to its contribution to the value of output, only about 20%. So the horticulture or the fruit, this is an important driver of agricultural growth in India. Now, this agricultural growth, when agriculture grows, there is a documented evidence that agricultural growth is more pro-poor than the growth in the non-agricultural sector. Now, this component of horticulture, one thing is that it contributes to higher and sustainable growth. Higher in terms of when the incomes are higher, it enhances resilience to income shocks, particularly when there are some kind of, these are short gestation crops, particularly the vegetables. So they contribute to resilience to income shocks since they provide, very higher and regular stream of outputs. And the, 1 hectare of, fruits or vegetable, it generates at least 5 times more returns compared to the staple cereals. Now, then they are labor intensive, almost more than twice. They require the labor more than twice any staple crops. And more importantly, when we're talking about its impact on the poverty, it is the smallholder farmers. They are more engaged in cultivation of these high value crops. They allocate more area to these crops compared to the other crops. What we observed is that here, sometimes they say they are riskier and all that, but they are very high value kind of things. So it will adversely affect their household food security when we allocate. But what is they don't ignore their food security also. They also allocate considerable amount of land to cereals, pulses, but they don't allocate the land to the riskier crops like oil seeds and all this stuff. Another thing, we see that there is an inverse size productivity relationship in case of horticulture. Smaller the size, more is the output because of the labor intensive kind of nature. And this kind of advantage, it has disappeared from the staple crops. When and this consumption is more responsive to income changes. There is a higher income elasticity, and when the sector is growing at a faster rate, it's more concentrated at the bottom end of the rural households, that is smallholders. So it will have a larger effect on reducing poverty and the inequality. Okay. Agricultural markets, this is a big issue in India. Markets, they have spent growth in markets has not kept pace with the growth in production of horticultural commodities. And cold storage capacity is extremely low, and 70% of the cold storage is mainly for potatoes. And again, of course, the refrigerated vans, pack houses, cooling units, etc., they are very less in the country. I will just highlight some of the things, particularly from the perspective of the market reforms. In India, you know that agricultural marketing, marketing of agriculture produce, it is governed by the Agriculture APMC Act. And lot of reforms, of course, they tried from 2000 onward, but it didn't happen. In the National Horticulture Mission, Dr. Malhotra, you was, I think, the commissioner at that time. They took a very innovative step. They said this to the state government, we will provide financial assistance for market development of horticulture crops, provided you allow direct sales of fruits and vegetables outside the regulated market and eliminate the market fee. And this helps. Till today, about 14 states have deregulated. And what we observed here is very clearly that this deregulation has helped attract private players and realize better prices to the farmers almost in all the commodities, leave aside say potato and all that, but it helped the farmers. So this kind of regulation that we are required. This is my last slide. Market reforms in horticulture itself is not necessary. We generally talk about the market access and all those kind of things. So when we're talking about the diversification, it is directly related to market access. But other government interventions, when you are procuring huge quantities of rice and wheat at minimum spot prices, so when we do it, the effect of this diversification, it dilutes, it decreases like anything. And this is very clearly comes out here in case of vegetables and plantation crops. When the procurement of this rice and wheat, it increases, the area allocation to vegetables, plantation crops, it decreases. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.